I'm gonna just put us on mute and let's just take a minute of quiet just to get us into the right frame for our session today. So we'll just take this moment. Yeah la 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 yeah la 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 hi la 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 hi la 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 yeah la 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 yeah, lie, 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 lie. Once again, Boker Tov, everyone. So what I wanted to talk about today, before we do our first sit, actually the themes I want to center on for our whole session today is Purim. Purim is coming up, and Purim is a Freilich holiday. It's a lot of celebration, a lot of humor, a lot of fun. Purim is actually a profound holiday, actually. And sometimes the deeper spiritual message of Purim can get lost in all of the revelry. And that's actually by design, ironically. But maybe that's why we have the Megillah, we study it, we study all the themes of Purim. In a way, it's like everything else. It needs preparation in order to really enter into the meaning of the simcha of the holiday. And that's what I want to do today. I want to take us a little bit into the depths, the omek, because Purim isn't just actually a happy memory. It's actually a tragic memory. It's not just about lightness and light, but it's about darkness. Tremendous darkness in the story of Purim. It's a story about genocide, about an attempted genocide against our people, and about this bloody revenge that we take on them. So lots and lots of darkness in the story of Purim. So in many ways, Purim is about our confrontation with evil, and it's a confrontation with the struggling and the suffering that we all deal with, not only as the Jewish people for many centuries, but in our own lives. And that's what I want to point us to. I want us to take these themes and then turn them inward now for our meditation. Turn them inward so that we're looking at the core ideas and how they speak to us in our ongoing practice of staying present. So Megillat Esther is the name of the book. And Esther, even the name is a hint at the theme of Purim. And I'm going to share the screen now so I can show you some texts. So this is a quote from Deuteronomy. Vanochi haster astir panai, and I will surely hide my face in that day for all the evil which they shall have wrought, in that they turned unto other gods. This is one of the lines in the Torah that becomes the basis for our explanation for the experience of dark times and the experience of evil. The experience of evil is what we call hester panim, the hiding of God's face. And in very many ways, that's what the book of Esther is all about. The book of Esther is about a story where God's face is hidden. You don't meet God anywhere in the Megillah. God does not play a role. It's one of the books of the Bible. You don't have God either appearing as a character, or you don't have God speaking through a prophet. You don't have the word of God revealed anywhere. There is nothing like that in the book of Esther. The face is hidden. And yet, and this is the wonderful double-sidedness of everything. And yet, in the person of Esther, that hiddenness isn't so hidden, right? And that's why Purim is all about us contemplating and entering into the veils and the masks and the costumes that we wear, right? And here we have the role of Esther in this text here. Lo higida Esther et ama ve'et moladata. Esther didn't say her people or her birthplace, for Mordechai had charged her that she should not tell it, that she should conceal it. She was in a mask. She was, she was in drag as a Persian. She was hiding behind this persona as this queen of Persia, when in fact, who she really was a Jewish young woman. And who she really was actually an agent of God in saving the Jewish people. And you can't tell that on the surface. You have to actually be still enough in the story to go below that level and to see what's really going on. You see already, are you starting to pick up on the resonances with practice, with meditation, right? There's the surface level of consciousness and awareness, but you kind of have to go deeper in order to find out what's really going on. And so that's what we're doing here. That's what Purim is pointing us to. I'm going to skip this Baal Shem Tov text, but I want to come to this teaching of Penina Feller, because I think this is a beautiful way of talking about it. She said, Purim invites us to set aside a time in which we completely reverse our wardrobe, which in turn reverses our identity. It's an invitation to cross and reverse all other dichotomies and uniforms of our lives as well. On Purim, we are using clothes against themselves to deny the power to box us in and simultaneously to redeem us from needing redemption. Purim makes us wonder if there is an authentic self at all, or whether it is all just endless masks upon masks. On the surface, it seems that Purim involves an escape from reality. Purim provides us with the hope that the garments we put on that seem only to mask our present realities can reveal the deep-seated consciousness of our potential for change, our ability to bring happiness and fulfillment to our lives. We may ask what lies beneath a story that intimates the absence of God and meaning, and the holiday of Purim, which is about frivolity and play. Underneath the garment of the story is perhaps a glimpse of the existence of a force in the universe that can help us move beyond who we are and what our lives presently are, and enable us to become what we aspire to be. I think that that's a really beautiful way of talking about Purim right there. And I want to unpack that a little bit. It's interesting. We talk about, when in meditation, we talk about a lot about the ego and about sort of seeing the ego for what it is. Another way of talking about the ego is the word personality. right? Our personality is all the stuff that, all the stories that have shaped us about, and all of our genetics and all of that, that have made us who we are. We have, each of us has our own unique personality and our own ego. Interestingly, you know, does anyone know what the etymology of the word personality is? The etymology is the Greek word persona. The Greek word persona. Anyone know what that is? It means mask. It's a mask. Right? I love that. I love how language, so this happens so often. Language actually often contains, and you really investigate it, spiritual insights. You just have to know how to, you know, how to dig down into the origins of words, right? So our personality and our ego itself is the mask that we're wearing. And the journey of maturity, when we think about the journey of life, you know, when we're kids, we're learning how to be who we are, and we learn first from our parents, and then we learn from our peers, and then we become adults, and we look around at our community, and we look at our society, and we assimilate all of these expectations of how we feel we are supposed to be in the world. And we learn a lot of smart and wise things from that. We're learning from our religion and from our Torah, all of these things that are showing us how we are supposed to be. And Purim pokes fun at that. Purim is saying, yes, we have all of these masks that we're wearing, but a mature person, and I like to say that another word for spirituality is maturity, by the way. That's my favorite definition of spirituality. Maturity is spirituality because the more mature we become, the more we hold on to our masks lightly. The more we realize, it's all passing, right? Ultimately, the things that we had such storm and drang about when we were young, you know, so long as we're alive and we have this moment and we have our health, it can be okay. That's spirituality right there. It's seeing through the persona, the mask that we are wearing. And, you know, I've gone through many iterations in my own personal journey of my life, some of which was, you know, made headlines. I realized the masks that I was wearing to hide a more authentic self in my life. And that mask was carefully placed there in my story, you know, in order to be what I believe to be acceptable to society. And so, you know, Purim was always a very powerful holiday for me because it's about sloughing off that mask, and that's actually redemptive, right? And it's that, you know, my story is pretty out there, but we all are living that same story in various ways, right? We're all learning how to take off that mask, or we need to use the mask in order to get by in society, but don't identify as the mask. Don't forget who you really, really are beneath it. You know, Aldous Huxley writes about a study that appeared in the 1940s that came out probably during or right after World War II, where they were, it was a British study that was following British military during the bombings of World War II. These teams of these guys, these young soldiers who got into one of the B-52 bombers, whatever they were going on these bombing missions, and how they pulled together as a team. And so this psychologist studied these young soldiers prior to their going off on these missions. And he created all these sort of these metrics to study their personality types. Some were extroverted, some were introverted, some, you know, were more anxious, some were more type B. There were all these different kinds of personality indices for each of these members of these different teams. And these teams they're all individuals, and so they were all these very different personality types. And then he studied them based upon their experiences when they were on these bombing raids. So remember, that's a radical, extreme experience. And he wrote the article on a bombing mission of these young men, and the plane was hit and struck, and they all thought they were about to die. Okay, and they had to carry out their mission. Their plane was in trouble, and they had to turn around and they had to come back home. And the only way they were going to make it home safely was by working seamlessly together as a team. And in that extreme situation, these young soldiers all worked in perfect tandem. In other words, a deeper level of self emerged in the collective experience of these human beings, all radically different personalities. On the ground, in peacetime, you know, they were just totally different guys. But in that moment of when all other masks had to strip away, they all became poised, they all were calm, they all were deeply present for each other, they all listened, they all made very clear decisions, and they reported on having this state of clarity and presence that enabled them all to get home safely. In other words, all of the ego stuff disappeared. The masks were gone. The hidden Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the hidden Hashem, who's normally hidden in the normal life, suddenly emerged. And so it's in, you know, the story of Purim is also a crisis. It's also a crisis story, and it shows how, you know, the God of the Torah doesn't really exist in our experience. God doesn't come down and make miracles or talk to us, right? So where does God emerge? God emerges, sometimes we see it most clearly, ironically, in moments of crisis, when the calm emerges, because there's no other choice, right? And that's the key, right? To realize there's a deeper self that's there. I like to talk about it this way, you know, the spiritual life shows us there's not just two axes of who you are, but three. What do I mean by that? Normally we'd say, what are we a product of our genes and our brain chemistry, or are we a product of our environment? Is it nurture or nature, right? Those are the two things that we normally think of as identifying who we really are. But our spiritual life teaches us that there's a third axis that brings us to who we really are. And that third axis only emerges if we allow it to. And that is our divine self. That is our deepest self. That is our neshama, the level of soul that can emerge, certainly in moments of crisis, but we shouldn't have to wait for moments of crisis to allow it to emerge. We can also allow it to emerge much more pleasantly by sitting in meditation, by engaging in spiritual practice, by finding moments, even during the craziness of a day, to breathe, to become still, right? Then that clarity emerges from its hiding place behind the mask. That is the challenge. But that is not it's a challenge, and it's hard, and it takes work. But paradoxically, it's actually always there. We just don't notice it because we're caught up in the persona, the mask that we put on. But actually who we really are is always peaceful, is always in a state of balance and bliss and clarity. That's what Purim attests to. And that's what our practice brings us to. Okay, let's take a few minutes now in a sit. So everybody, get yourself comfortable, relaxed, and yet alert. Right? So you want to see if there's any tension in your shoulders. You can roll your shoulders around like this. Your neck. Right? This is about relaxed and alert. Remember not to slump back in your chair if you're not at all possible. Just make sure you can feel both of your tush bones seated so that you're balanced in your body. And if you're comfortable doing so, you can close your eyes. Allow yourself to simply become at ease in your body. Invite us all to take a nice deep breath in. Hold it for a sec and relax and release. Another deep breath in. Hold it for a moment and release. Now allow your breath to just come back to normal. Noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. Notice how each breath restores our bodies, our awareness, nourishes us. See if you can just bring your body into your awareness. The real core of a healthy meditation practice is to see if you can just rest as awareness. And notice that the breath and the whole body emerges from that infinite, spacious awareness. And in this space, I want you to just try some experiments out with me. I want you to become aware of your feet. Just notice the sensations in your feet. If they're on the floor, notice that the subtle pressure of gravity on your feet, or any other subtle sensations in the muscles and skin. And see if you can notice not just your feet, but the awareness, the spaciousness around your feet. And now notice with me how before I asked you to become aware of your feet, did you even have feet? Or was there just an infinite awareness? And then suddenly your feet emerged as I called them to your awareness. We can do this with any part of our body. Become aware of your face. Where was your face just a moment ago when I was talking about your feet? Well, we know intellectually it was there, but awareness was infinite and noticing something else arising. And so now we're noticing our face. Notice how our face emerges from the infinite. A persona, a mask, is something we wear over our face. But in many ways, our face itself is a mask that we wear over our real body, our infinite body, which is just consciousness itself. Now bring your entire body into your awareness. Notice how your whole body emerges from this infinite space. You're not just stuck in your head, or you're not even stuck inside your body. Your body actually emerges within you. That's truer. Notice this brilliant, beautiful phenomenon called your body that has emerged from the great mystery of awareness that you really are. How beautiful and precious this body is, this transient thing, this breath that breathes this body, these various systems and fluids and muscles and organs that function so brilliantly in a knowledge that even you don't understand, and yet it all emerges from you. Even this body is a mask. That's all it is. It's a vehicle by which your infinite self moves in this world. Now bring your awareness even further out. Become aware of the room around you, of the whole house, of the neighborhood, of the whole country, of the whole planet. You can keep going until you reach the whole universe. All of this is also emerging within this infinite awareness, this spaciousness that you are. The universe itself is yet another mask that you wear that enables you to dance the divine dance of being, of form that emerges from emptiness. It's only within this world that you seem to be hidden. But as we sit here in this awareness, we realize we're always present. We're always here behind these masks. Free, infinitely free, beyond all suffering and pain. In the stillness, and as nothing other than love itself. Take another couple of minutes now in silence. Okay, so as we usually do, this is our little breather in the middle of our session. So this is an opportunity to ask questions about meditation or about what I taught, or if you want to reflect on what this sit has been like for you, or any sit or any kind of spiritual practice has been for you. This is a good time for us to share in our experiences to support each other in this as well. So any comments or questions of any kind? Yeah, Julia.
I had an interesting thought during this. I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking that sometimes it's easier to see God working through other people and you don't see it in yourself. But then what if you have to take that mask down for the divine spark to shine through?
That's true. I think what you just said is exactly it. I think the goal is to take the mask down. You know, I wanted to, you bring up a very interesting point. When Martin Buber teaches I and Thou, right? He talks about the experience of coming into the infinite mystery of the thou, and being completely, or Levinas even more so, because he talks about the face. So that really works with our present topic, right? That when you're confronted with the face of the other, that calls to you, that ultimately they say it creates ethics, but you're meeting God in the face of the other. That's true. But how do you meet God in the face of the other if we have the mask on? Right? Basic social worky skills 101, right, is active listening, which is meditation, right? It's how to, you have all the subspace chatter going on in your head, and you have to learn how to sort of move it over here and just listen to the other person. So that's the skill, how it's put out there. But I would like to suggest that there's a spiritual dimension to this that we can be practicing. When we come face to face with another human being, see if you can work on removing the face here so that there is only the spaciousness. Can you confront the other person, not face to face, but face to no face? By that I mean, there's only the openness here. There is only the infinite. Because when we check in with our actual experience, there is only the infinite from this perspective. So be that perspective, be that openness. Because what happens when we do that, that's pure love. There's no boundary between me and you at that moment. Any mask we wear is a boundary. And any wall we put up is an impediment to love. So the trick is take off the mask, practice taking off the mask. It sounds easy, take off the mask and you're fine. And we all know that's the hardest thing in the world to do, right? Many of us, we talk about being on for other people, right? You want to make sure you're being, listening and responsive. What happens if you just get still? It's hard for a lot of people. And just be that awareness. So thank you for that wonderful question. Anyone else?
Yeah, this morning I was listening to in fact, a podcast on Purim, and it was a different perspective about the meaning of Purim, which I think is interesting. I'm not sure how to relate it to, or if it can be related to this, but the point was this is the one important story that doesn't include God's intervention, and that one of the messages of Purim is that it answers the question, like, why are we here assimilated in the United States, thousands of miles away from other people, whether it's Jews in Russia or on their way to Israel or in Israel, and how we can answer the question, why should we help them at this moment and in this need? And so it traces the story as almost a political story of interconnectedness, and why if you look back to the story of Judah not too long ago, how he evolved to put himself at risk to protect his brother, and how that ethic evolves over the centuries and protects the Jewish people against a disaster, by Esther acting her role in the story.
That is so exactly on topic. I don't know why, it is so on topic, Joel. Thank you for that, right? If the theme is interconnectedness and acting behalf of the other, that's the face to no face thing I was just talking about, right? To know that that's love. To know interconnected means there's no boundary in between. There's no masks in between you and me. That I know that you and I are actually emerging from the same infinite awareness. We are two different masks of the same one God, right? And if you and I both understand that, then we're always going to be loving and caring for each other. Even if we're separated by thousands of miles and cultures and even years, we are going to be connected to each other because we know that so deeply. That's what we're actually celebrating on Purim, right? That's why it's a joyous holiday. Because even when the darkness is happening, the ultimate truth is there. Rob, did you have your hand up that I see?
So I was listening to a different podcast about the spiritual aspects of Purim, and one thought was to put on the opposite persona of what you would normally carry. Put on a MAGA hat or something and try and inhabit that character. But what occurred to me as I was thinking about this podcast was how this was actually, Purim was the opposite of Job. Both either bad things happened to Job, bad things are about to happen to the Jewish people. And in Job, it's all talk. Purim is all about action. So while God isn't there, God completely permeates everyone.
That's right.
Which gets to a point from your God class of that
Yes.
God is within us, not external to us.
Yes.
And it's the action in this world that matters.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. See, all these teachings actually become very confluent, right?
No, you can't see me. I'm behind my mask right now, which gave me a smile when we began, because I thought, is there anything more evident than just my name on a black screen as we're talking about masks?
We're all behind masks, right? So you're good.
but honey, I assure you, the spark of divine is living with me beneath this today, even though I'm not really ready for prime time.
Amen, amen.
Amen, amen. So here's my question. The thought occurred to me, and I have a question. Becoming super aware of taking that mask down and feeling very raw and very open at that moment, and aware that I am standing with someone who has no awareness of taking a mask down, him or herself. Is it possible to make that connection with mind down and really get the benefit of what you're talking about? Or does it have to be mutual? Certainly my consciousness and my perception are enhanced when I do that. But with the other, not doing that and being adversarial, what can you draw from that interaction?
I think you raised some really important points, which are very, very significant, which is, there's a difference between, being the infinite and the, no defenses around another person. What happens if that other person is toxic? And that's an important question. What I notice in my practice, Patty, when I deal with toxic people, I try to be that infinite awareness for other people. And instead of being defensive in the face of someone like that, I stay in that openness, but then I allow a response to emerge in that infinite openness. Because what happens is when you become still and you become the infinite for the other, and you're not trying to control who you are, you're not trying to manipulate your own mask, the response, just like those bombers on the plane, right? When you're, even if the person you are up against is being toxic, right? And you get very still, the response emerges, the healthy response emerges. And I don't expect you to believe me, just, try it. Just be as still as you can. And notice that, like, if somebody is going to be saying hurtful things to me, I start to move away from that person, right? Either literally or metaphorically move away without pushing back or fighting back or reacting with fear or defensiveness. I simply notice, look, this makes a withdrawal, right? You see the difference of orientation here? Go ahead, Patty.
And by pulling back, what occurs to me is you can do that and still be present and open,
yes,
for what there is on a different level for
that's
yourself.
right.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Right. And it's not easy. So don't get down on yourself if you find yourself getting really defensive and angry or whatever around a toxic person, because you're human.
Yeah,
right? So this is a practice.
I'm going to give myself at least 10 minutes to work on that. Yeah, that's Thank you.
Exactly. Sally.
So when Patty was saying that, it was making me think that there has to be an incentive to want to take off your mask. And when you were telling the story about when they felt this common threat, that's when they work together. And that's when they took off their masks, right? But so reflecting on that, I'm just wondering what gives somebody the incentive to want to take off their mask. There's got to be more than just this common threat. You can't, that would be unfortunate if that's the only way it can happen. So it just, I think each of us are motivated in a different way and are open to it in a different way. So the question is, and it sort of is reflecting on what Patty was saying, is what do we do to encourage this with other people?
Well, what I find in my experience, Sally, is be the living example. That's all you can do. Right? We can certainly encourage it in other people, but if we're expecting other people to get it, we're going to get frustrated. That's my experience. And so it's not, like I often talk about Byron Katie's 3 kinds of business. There's God's business, there's other people's business, and there's your business. And we spend a lot of our suffering in life happens because we're actually not in our own business. We're in God's business or we're in other people's business. We're in God's business when we say, oh, it shouldn't be snowing out, or there shouldn't be disasters in the world. We're in other people's business when we think this person shouldn't be toxic. They should be a nicer person. They should get it. Right? And when we do that, whenever we move out of our own business, we notice that it hurts. right? You ever notice that when you're worrying about, or you're upset about, or you're angry at God or somebody else, it always hurts. And then what is the redemption from that hurt? It is when we come back to ourselves. That's the metaphor of coming back to the breath in meditation is all about, right? When we come back to the spaciousness that I am, right? Which is the love. And when we're there, then, you know, the strongest place is to simply be that stillness. And I find, and believe me, you know, you all know me pretty well. I'm certainly not Mr. Beatifically enlightened at all moments, and at any moments. but when I can do that, you know, people pick up on it. It's infectious. People do become still without me having to say anything. You know, I heard many teachers tell me that the greatest teachers don't teach through what they say; they teach through their stillness and their silence. Right? They teach by being the living example. So I just want to offer that.
So when we were in Venice, we learned a lot about Carnival and masks. And the point of wearing masks was that you were then all equal. You know, no one knew whether you were the, you know, whatever, street sweeper or the king, basically wearing masks. And it's kind of like your, that first teaching that you had where wearing the mask gives you a chance to act as if.
Yes.
And then maybe by doing that action, you know, a lot of times you have to act that way before it's internalized. You have to just do it, even if you're not thinking it yet. And maybe that's the positive side to wearing the mask, that it lets you be something or do something like it said in the reading that you had, that you aspire to be, but you're not ready to be yet.
I love that. I would reframe it slightly, but I agree with it. But I would reframe it this way, Julia. Masks do allow us to behave in ways that we wouldn't under normal circumstances. You're right. In fact, remember I scrolled past a Baal Shem Tov text when the Baal Shem Tov text was making the point you just made, which is when you wear a mask, the kings and paupers become one, right? And then it enables everybody to give mishloach manot. You know, it doesn't matter if you're giving it to a rich person or to a poor person, everyone is just giving, right? So the idea is that the mask is the great equalizer. And the point of everybody wearing the mask is to make everybody aware that we're all wearing a mask all the time, right? And that even if I have the mask of the pauper and you have the mask of the king, right? We become aware that that behind the mask is the same loving, great equalizer, which is our divine nature, right? So yes, under normal circumstances, we'll hide behind a mask in order to be able to do things we wouldn't normally do. But what happens when when everybody shares the same insight that a mask is just this pretend? Right? You see how you get to the same point?
Right. It's like Patty's point. What if you have yours off, but somebody else doesn't? But you still know that they're wearing the mask.
Right, exactly.
That it's somebody else behind the mask. So even if yours is down and there isn't, and theirs isn't.
Beautiful. And in fact, this leads to another text, which I'm not gonna show us because we don't have a lot of time, but I will sum it up. The famous teaching that of ad lo yada, right? That you're supposed to get shikar on Purim until you can't tell the difference between Baruch Mordechai and Arur Haman. Blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman. This is challenging and from a moral perspective, but I want us to, and the rabbis all are uncomfortable with everything about this teaching, but because it's a dangerous teaching. But in this very safe setting, we can enter into the spiritual meaning behind it, which is even the person who comes across as the saint and the person who comes across as the sinner are also your masks. There is a place at which even saints and sinners merge into one infinite awareness. In other words, there is a place that transcends a place. It's a, I'm not saying a literal place, a spiritual awareness that transcends even these separations that we make between good and evil in our lives, which doesn't mean, by the way, I'm not saying there's no such thing as evil or we shouldn't fight injustice. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the spiritual life is one where you find the place that points to the ultimate awareness that is even beyond all of that. Because if we're going to make the assertion that we are all a mask, some of us are moral and some of us are immoral, but it's all one interconnected self, interconnected love, interconnected divinity that is behind all of the, even the masks of good and bad, of darkness and light. That's a challenging idea intellectually for us, and maybe even emotionally for us. But nobody said spiritual practice is easy, right? Because what happens if we can just put aside our ideas and judgments about that idea for a moment and simply live in that ultimate truth? There's relief, and there's a redemptive idea. And the redemptive idea is that there is something beyond even the evil and the suffering that we see. There is a potential for goodness. There's a potential for redemption. There's even a potential for joy. And that's the ultimate message of Purim. That's really where it goes. So let's take the last couple of minutes and sit with that. Okay, so everyone, see if you can just go right back into your quiet state of following the breath. All right, let's take one deep breath in and release it. And now allow your breathing to come back to its normal course of in and out on its own. And as the breath comes and goes, notice all of the phenomena that are arising in the mind. The thoughts, the images, the feelings that echo throughout our bodies. Notice the sensations, the sounds of the room, the sensations in our skin, the tensions in our muscles, in places where there is relaxation and tension. Notice the places where there is pleasantness, and notice the places where there is unpleasantness in this awareness for just this moment. And what I'm going to ask us to sit with in these last couple of minutes is simply the knowledge that this awareness of the pleasant and the unpleasant, the positive and the negative, the darkness and the light, the good and the bad, the Baruch Mordechai and Arur Haman, all of these things arise. They flourish for a moment and they pass in this one unchanging stillness that is loving, that is peaceful, that is just present, that gives rise to it all, and that is still present in love even after whatever it is, good or bad, has passed. So let's just notice those comings and goings, the good and the bad, and notice who we really are, the awareness within which it all comes and goes. Yay, day, 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 ya, da, 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 yay, day, 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 yay, 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 day, day, ya, da, 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 da. Hey, ay, 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 ya, da, ay, ya, da, 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 da. Hey, da, da, ay, ya, da, 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 da. Hey, ya, da, ay, ya, da, 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 yay, day, yay, day, 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 day. Thank you, everybody. Wishing everybody have a beautiful, safe day and Shabbat Shalom and happy week before Purim. And wishing everybody all good things and many, many blessings.